Hello, Trinity Tigers. Welcome to Learning Together's live seminar series that's part of Trinity's lifelong learning initiatives, presented by Trinity University's Office of Alumni Relations. My name is Luis Martinez, class of '99, director of Trinity's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The Alumni Office has invited me to help moderate this webinar and having a sort of long, hour-long conversation with one of our alums. It's a distinct pleasure of mine to introduce today's webinar speaker, Tiffany Chimal, class of 2007. It's actually kind of interesting. In this sort of kind of global marketplace where we are, I'm speaking to Tiffany right now connected through Skype. She's in Italy. I am in Madrid as part of our Madrid program, and we're sort of coordinating all of this back home in San Antonio. So it's really exciting to sort of have this opportunity. Tiffany Chimal has been recently profiled in Forbes magazine for her journey in helping as a child her mother sew and clothes, where she manages now a network of over 150 factories and leads a variety of sort of remotely based businesses and working with manufacturers abroad and helping entrepreneurs all over the world in her amazingly incredibly innovative and interesting company, MakersValley. So before I start engaging Tiffany in our conversation, talking a little bit about her entrepreneurial journey, talking quite a bit about her company and how you people can develop a small, profitable fashion business from their home, I'd like to invite those of you who are watching this seminar live, that if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and submit them on the Q&A tab, and we'll be happy to go ahead and answer those questions during the course of our webinar series. So, Tiffany, hello.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on the webinar. I'm so glad to be connected from Italy.
You're so welcome. It's so exciting to sort of do this and with sort of the global marketplace to connect three separate locations. So please, let's start with you. Can we talk a little bit about sort of Tiffany? You came to Trinity in 2007. Tell us a little bit about sort of, what led you to Trinity and a little bit about sort of this background of sort of watching your mother sew and where that sort of desire and passion for fashion came from.
Right. So I graduated from Trinity in 2007, studied biology there. I'm a Texas native, so born and raised in Texas, and grew up in a family that was entrepreneurially minded. So, I come from an immigrant family. My father's from Mexico City. We always kind of had side jobs that we were doing, going to markets. We were selling clothing. My mother and I were, sewing clothing, designing them and selling them. And that really set me up nicely to do this business I'm doing now. So I was in Trinity, and shortly after I graduated, I did my MBA at University of Texas in Arlington. Okay. And while I was doing that, I was working in healthcare in the research department, and kind of pivoted a little bit, decided to go abroad to Buenos Aires, Argentina, in my last semester of my MBA. Loved that, had the travel bug. And eventually made my way out to Italy, where basically this idea of the company of MakersValley was born. So we've been doing this for about 3 years now, and just using, my studies from business and biology and healthcare all kind of blended together and kind of helped in running the business.
So what point did sort of the entrepreneurial bug hit you? Did it happen while you were still a college student at Trinity, or did it not really happen until after your MBA, or was it something that you kind of felt all along?
It was something I always sort of felt. I've always kind of, it kind of sounds funny, but like, the lemonade stand, right? We all think about that when you think about being an entrepreneur, but that was something I did. And I was always creatively doing things on the side, that I was always kind of creative. And so I always try to find little things to do. And, for me, it was really about meeting someone that had a vision, an idea, someone to team up with to really start a business. So I think I had already the want, the desire, and I just needed to connect the dots. And I think traveling and being outside of the United States, being exposed to entrepreneurs from other parts of the world, and just being part of that energy of, talking through ideas with them, it really sparked, the idea for MakersValley, and right. Just getting out there and talking to people about a business idea and just starting to develop it, from the ground up. Slowly every day you work on it and you develop something.
That's really interesting. So did you get a chance to sort of do study abroad while you were in college?
I didn't actually. I actually transferred into Trinity. Yeah. I actually transferred into Trinity. I was there 3 years, And, the great thing about Trinity is there's a lot of international students. So I think that really pushed me in that direction. Honestly, I had friends from all over the world just based there at Trinity. So that kind of got me my first exposure to an international audience.
Cool. So did you feel that you had to have the MBA before you started sort of becoming an entrepreneur, or was it something that you had another goal for the MBA and then realized during that part while you were sort of studying abroad and visiting Argentina that like, whoa, and then finally Italy, that like, whoa, like I want to do something different?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually graduated right at the recession in 2007, which a lot of us, it was really difficult, coming out of college into the market and the job market. And the MBA just kind of happened as, a natural next step. I just wanted to keep learning.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I would say having your own business, you don't need to have an MBA, although it definitely helps you avoid some common mistakes that entrepreneurs might make in their first few years. It's definitely helped. Instead of, outsourcing to an accountant, you can do it yourself. So that definitely helps. If you're bootstrapping your business and starting with limited funds, it helps to have those skills through an MBA degree.
So it helps, but it's not necessarily something that's required before you will go off and do something.
No, not required, definitely, but definitely helpful.
So let's dive straight into sort of MakersValley and so what MakersValley is doing. How long has MakersValley been in business now?
So we started in April 2016. It's a New York company, an LLC.
Okay, so it's been 3 years now.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about before the launch, not quite when you launched MakersValley, but when you were sort of still at sort of that idea stage. What was going on in your mind? What were the other ideas that you were sort of beginning to sort of swim through to finally that then led for you to sit there and say like, no, we're going to do MakersValley as a company?
Yeah, that's a good story. So the beginning is always the fun part, right? That's where you always have great stories. And it's funny because, I had moved to Italy. I was teaching English there.
Okay.
At a small private school. I was teaching in Italy. I went to Italy as an intern teaching English.
Okay.
Was how I ended up getting over there. And that's how I met my co-founder, actually both of my co-founders. And, I started out doing that. And, shortly after I went to Italy, basically I moved from Naples, Italy to Milan, got a job working there in research in a hospital, going back to that. Then I moved over to New York City, and I never lived in New York City before. I didn't have a job. I needed, an income. And so what I did was my co-founder, he knew a tailor in Italy that made suits. And so I had, this tailor in Italy make me some suits, sew some suits together and ship them down to New York City in my apartment in Brooklyn. And I basically went online and in the scrappiest way possible, created a business. In about a week, I had an online shop using Shopify. I had never used Shopify before, taught myself. I started cold calling, just calling boutiques that sold suits around Brooklyn and New York. And I started going there. And I researched everything about Italian suits and textiles and just started talking to people about these suits and selling them, something I had no experience in. I had never worked in retail before. And just going door to door, that's when we really came up with the idea for what MakersValley is today. Because, I was going around with a suitcase full of suits made in Italy, very high quality suits that, retail for $3,000 to $4,000. Trying to sell them wholesale to boutiques, in Brooklyn and New York. And a lot of people were thinking, why does this person have suits,
Exactly.
And how is this happening? What is the connection? And so that's the little, of being an entrepreneur, there's that part of getting outside your comfort zone. And that's literally it. That's what they're talking about when that happens. So, you're going around to boutiques and you get a lot of no's, I don't want to buy your suits. I did eventually sell about 10 suits, custom suits. That gave me the money to start MakersValley and to create the LLC. Because, we're what's called a bootstrap company, which means we don't have any outside funding.
So you're not going off doing Shark Tank and raising dollars and doing that, pitching to investors. You're raising money, and that's the money that you use to grow your business.
Exactly. I'm selling, right? I'm just talking about something to someone, selling it. And really, it's about that first sell. If you can convince someone to buy what you're selling, the next sell gets easier and easier. So when I was going door to door to all these boutiques, they were basically telling me, your suits are super nice. But, I'm wondering if you know a guy in Italy that can make me my own brand of shirts or jeans or shoes, etc. And that's when we kind of took a step back and we thought, there's a bigger picture here than selling suits. People are wanting access to factories, to manufacturers. Luckily, we had those connections. So that's when we kind of pivoted and thought, okay, the suit business is going great. And this is, we're getting some income from this, but let's actually expand on this and build out a platform where we can start connecting these people to these manufacturers.
So at that point, then sort of MakersValley was born, right? You said, hey, we're going to build up a platform. We're going to connect manufacturers to people who want sort of custom manufacturing with regards to clothing. Why clothing? Was it sort of the suit experience, or just that's where the initial sort of companies were? Why was clothing, of all the things you could have done, why was clothing the very first thing?
I think it was just because my co-founder had those connections in Italy. He grew up in Italy. His parents have boutiques here. So, when you have a clothing boutique, you're working with wholesalers and they give you catalogs and, you pick, let's say you want 10 of a shirt. Well, the boutique next to you also has 10 of the same shirt. So at some point you want something unique that has your brand on it. And you want customers to walk through your door to buy that special shirt and not find it on Amazon, for example. And that's really the niche of the kind of people that we work with that really want to create something unique and custom.
Wow, that's really interesting. So it's different than like the kind of stuff that happens, you see something on Alibaba and you buy 1 million of them on wholesale and then you sell them in your store. It's custom manufacturing. That's what you guys are doing? Exactly.
Yeah. So, on our platform, you can, anyone can sign up. Mostly when we started, it was mostly boutique owners. So our first customer was a boutique in Brooklyn that we still work with 3 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he had an idea for a pair of jeans. He had customers come in and he'd say, I love these jeans, but I wish, the pocket was a little bigger or they were a little longer. And so he knew in his mind what kind of product his customers wanted, but he had no way to manufacture it because he couldn't find a manufacturer on Google. And he also didn't want to make, like on Alibaba, he didn't want to make perhaps, 500 units of these jeans. Because there is a possibility they may not sell. So he really wanted to start with small batch orders. And that's, before we had the platform with MakersValley, we were doing everything offline. So I was literally going to this person's, writing it, email. I mean, before you have someone that's really good at computer programming, you have to do all this offline. So you have to go to the place, write down the orders, call them and we started the business really like that, very basic. Shipping, this boutique owner shipped a pair of jeans to Italy and the factory made them a sample. And now it's more technologically advanced, but it really started out very simple, everything offline.
So of your sort of client mix, so you started off with sort of a boutique or a couple of boutiques. I'm not going to ask you to give us any sort of, private personal information, right? Because we're public. But can you give me some sort of sense about like how that customer mix was at the beginning and where it is today? Because you're serving more than just boutiques looking for sort of custom lines now, right?
Right. So in the beginning, boutiques was just the easiest person to talk to, because they're out there, they need inventory to put on their shelves. And so that was our easiest way to kind of ease our way into starting the business and learning as much as possible from them about how we could build out a service for them that really helped them. But besides brick and mortar boutique owners, we also started getting contacted a lot by online clothing shops.
Oh, really? Like big shops, like sort of mom and pop kind of things?
Like say you work in finance and you retire and you want to start selling, you want to set up a Shopify store or online store and start selling your own brand of clothing.
So
we started getting
primarily.
Yes. Yeah. So we started getting a lot of people. Actually, that's the majority of our clients, are online brands, online shop owners. And then we have brick and mortar, and just also independent entrepreneurs that just want to connect with a manufacturer and sell clothing. They also sign up.
So like I'm a designer. I've got this great vision for scarves. I'd love to sort of bring scarves to the world. And so maybe do you work with people who might like start something on maybe Etsy that might be sort of like handmade and then scale that to produce something like that for folks like those as well?
Yes, exactly. So maybe they're selling on Etsy and they're selling, let's say, 250 scarves a month or something, and they want to eventually scale to where they're selling, 1,000. They need a factory. So we have factories that produce scarves and silk. They import the silk from China. And what you'll do is just go on our platform and upload the print that you want on the scarf. And then we find you through our platform. The manufacturer will send you quotes to make those scarves.
Wow. So why don't we spend some time talking a little bit about MakersValley? So we talked a little bit about sort of how it began, sort of paper and pen, working with sort of boutiques, expanded to grow with other people. Tell me about the platform. Tell me about what you do, because it sounds like it's a tech company.
It is, yeah. It's a tech company, and it's a fashion tech company, and it's we try to make the process really simple. Where you go to our website, MakersValley.net, and you sign up. Anyone can sign up. You don't have to have a fashion degree to start your own fashion brand. So that's a good thing. We really walk you through the process. So actually, most people we work with don't know anything about fashion. So you sign up and you answer a series of questions in what we call a project. About the garment you want to make. So say you want to make shoes, or you want to make hats, or a dress, or a shirt. You answer this series of questions that we've put together after creating your account, and you upload either pictures of them, or if you say you did study fashion and you're a little more advanced, you can upload your sewing pattern. You fill out all that information, you submit that project, and we call that a design listing, sort of like Craigslist, where you have a listing, right? Uh-huh. And the factories can all see it. All of our Italian manufacturers can see it, and they can send you bids to show you how much it'll cost you to make one sample and to mass produce your, say, shirt design. And so that's really the process. And once you get all those bids in, you can take a look at them, see which one works for you. You approve one of them, and then MakersValley, helps facilitate the sample for you. We invoice you for the sample. Once you get that sample in 6 weeks and you love it, show it to your clientele, your friends, try it on, see how the new shoes in Italy fit you. Then you can go into production and say, okay, I want to make now 500 of these shoes in Italy. And we help you then work with the manufacturer to get your shoes to you, so you can start selling them.
So this is really unique. You're right. Like, I mean, there's lots of things that are really unique about it. I mean, the first one is sort of this technology platform, right? I get to upload my, dress with pockets, because God knows we need dresses with pockets. That's an important thing that, lots of manufacturers may not have. And so I can sort of upload my pattern, or I can sort of work with you to sort of give you a sense about what that is. And you will help me find bids from manufacturers that will manufacture for that. So that's one interesting thing. The other really interesting thing that I find about this is, if one wants to sort of manufacture in a place like China, right, you're looking at minimum orders that are like thousands, right, or tens of thousands. You're working with much more smaller orders. Like, is that just a function of like Italy or the manufacturers that you're working with? Right. Or is that just a function of sort of the focus that you have as a company?
So Italian manufacturers are really great at what's called small batch manufacturing, which is, around 200 pieces. That's really their strength, because, here in Italy, they're doing everything hand sewn. They also use sewing machines, but they really pay attention to the artisan detail. They're taking a lot of time to really make a great high quality garment. So a lot of our designers, that come to us, they really appreciate that, because it lowers their risk. They don't have to order 500 units. They can experiment and order maybe 50 pairs of shoes, see how they sell them, and then, order another 50 in a different color. So it's really great for someone that's just breaking into this business, because they can try different styles, see what works best, and then kind of grow organically with us over the years is the goal.
So a question from people online, and again, we're about 20 minutes into our conversation. If you've got any questions you'd like us to engage as part of our conversation, please feel free to go ahead and click and submit the Q&A button. We had an inquiry question come on in about sort of the questions of economy of scale, right? So with regards to like the sort of sweet spot of where you're working, how is that advantageous for like your small manufacturer, or how is that potentially advantageous for your customer?
So it's advantageous for the factories because first they join free. So, it's a great opportunity for them to internationalize, because a lot of manufacturers here that produce for large brands like Hermes, Saks Fifth Avenue, they're not readily accessible by everyone online. They maybe don't have even an internet presence at all. So MakersValley really enables them to have that online presence. And we really also coach the factories and help them do business internationally. In addition, the way garments are typically made is, you may have noticed, like in fast fashion, you'll see a new product on the shelves every couple months, and you're thinking, how does this brand develop that shoe so fast? The reason they develop that shoe so fast, for example, and I'm using shoe as an example, but I mean, pretty much any garment, this is how it's done, is the brand, the factory, they have their base shoe models that they make all year. And then they might change different components of it, like the color of the sole or the shoelaces. But essentially, they're using that basic shoe. And that's why our factories are able to send you quotes with just photos of a product, right? Because they have that base shoe, and they've been making shoes for hundreds of years in Italy. So, for them, it's advantageous because maybe they have a monthly capacity. They know they can make, let's say, 10,000 shoes. So instead of, for the factories working with just one brand to produce 10,000 shoes a month, instead they can work with MakersValley and service 10 designers that are making a few hundred pairs of shoes. And that's great for them because they can also learn the market. They can learn what it's like to work with people across the world from them, and that helps them kind of also test out and experiment with different models. And they really like that part of it.
So the protection of the design, this is one of the questions that came in from the people viewing the webinar. There's some places where you're doing manufacturing where, you might submit sort of bids and designs, and by the time you leave said country, it'll be sold online, a clone version of what you were trying to sell at pennies on the dollar. Like, what work do you do, or what kind of assurance do you provide the designers that they're going to get their sort of design or their products protected in that way from sort of clones or clone manufacturing?
That's a good question. So actually, the clone manufacturing, the way that we've seen that happening is, what'll happen is the manufacturer will get an order for, let's say, 100 pairs of shoes, but they'll make 200. And then, before you know it, they're selling that extra 100 pairs of shoes to whoever they want. The thing is we have, our business has contracts that protect intellectual property of our customers. We also have contracts with our manufacturers. It's not really advantageous for our manufacturers to infringe on the intellectual property rights, just because if we do discover that, they're out of our network. Sure. So that in the long term wouldn't be very good for their business. So we do, we check on that, and we make sure we keep all the patterns in our office here. We make sure to give you your pattern back so that it's in your hands. So we do have things built in to make sure that we protect your intellectual property, and that's really important as a designer, to stay on top of that as well, and to just make sure you have your patterns back, and you're getting the right products in your hands. So that's how we approach that.
So there's some really incredible value, right? I see a quality assurance component with regards to myself as a manufacturer creating something on Etsy or Shopify, right? I'm assuring of having real high quality. I'm getting some level of assurance that there's some level of protection of intellectual property. Are you all also providing some kind of level of like quality assurance as well, like on the ground, to ensure that the quality is up to my particular standards?
So what's really cool about our platform, and I mean, our whole goal in MakersValley is what we're trying to do is democratize manufacturing. So when we started the business, we felt like apparel manufacturing, when people think about a clothing factory, maybe you have kind of some negative thoughts about it. You kind of think of sweatshops, and we know that apparel factories are not always like that. Here in Italy, there's families that run factories, and it's their bread and butter for decades. And here there are people that are doing great work, and we want to show that to the world. So, our whole point is, in our platform, what we have is, when you create a project, say for a shirt, you also have a timeline in your project where the factories can upload live photos and videos of them cutting and sewing your garments, which Wow. You can then sell, or you can not sell, but you can share those photos and videos with your fans on social media. And we're really doing that to promote the transparency, because we want people to see, this is what it looks like inside a factory. These are the people actually making your products for you. So we do that to lean into that concept.
Very cool. Very cool. It's also incredibly transparent, right? The process is very transparent with regards to both the manufacturer as well as sort of the designer as well. That's something I found was really interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people want to know, where was my clothing made? And, there's a few years ago, there was a trend where if you went to a luxury goods store, there would be a little barcode on it where you could scan it and you could see where the shoe was made, for example. So that's really great. And I think as a consumer myself, I also want to know who made my products that I'm buying. And I think it's very important to have that connection. And we really want people to feel like they're on the factory floor, through their timeline, they can see videos from the factory, and we want them to feel part of the process and help them tell the story of their brands that they're creating.
Can you give me an example of a story about a designer or an early stage entrepreneur whom you sort of helped during the course of their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have one of our most amazing designers. She's out of Dallas. She's actually an attorney there, and she's developing a line of shoes for women in 10 different colors, so heels. And she really found an opportunity in the market for women. Some women like for their heels to match their skin tone. So she really found a need in the market for that. And so she wanted to create a line of shoes to cater to that women, Italian quality shoes. So she used our platform, found a shoe manufacturer here in Italy through us. She launched a Kickstarter campaign and raised about $20,000 for her first production run. She's about to make about 100 pairs of shoes. And it's really exciting to be part of her story and to start Kickstarter, which is in case for people don't know, it's a platform where you can raise money for a business idea that you have. And she is about to launch her line in Dallas, and she's been on the news about it, and she had a model shoot. So that was really great to share that.
Wow. So there's lots of really cool things about your business, right? Like you are in the business of as a startup doing this really cool startup thing, but you're helping local manufacturers in Italy sort of be able to access a global marketplace, have access to technology and lots of different kinds of manufacturing, and in some ways to sort of help them in sort of this competitive marketplace where manufacturing might be sort of offshoring to places that might be less expensive, which is either automated or where there might be other practices that might lead to cloning. So you really get to help sort of Italian manufacturers sort of maintain their business. But you're also doing this really cool thing for other kinds of entrepreneurs as well, which is someone who says like, hey, I've got this idea for this great shoe, or hey, I've got this great idea for a skirt with pockets, or I've got this great idea. I mean, was it always the vision to help sort of both ends of that entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah, it definitely was. So what had happened was my co-founder, who was born and raised here in Italy, since he was really little, he was working in his parents' clothing shops, and he would take his bike to the nearby factories, and they would have defected clothing from large production runs for these huge brands like Versace, Gucci. They'd have defective clothing, and the factories, instead of throwing that clothing away, they would sell it to the local boutiques in Italy. So he would go there with his bike, get the clothes, bring it back to his mom's shop. They'd tear out the tag, they sew her tag in and sell it. So when he moved to New York City and, walking down Fifth Avenue, he was seeing a bunch of brands that he knew the person that made that. He knew the artisan and the factory in Italy that made it. And he was seeing how much that clothing was selling for, in New York. And he really saw the discrepancy, in how much the goods were being sold for and how much, the factory was selling them to the brand for, because he knew those families that were making it. And so the whole idea was to kind of empower these factories and really help them connect with new clientele and help boost their local economy as well. So, that's really where we started, was to help them, and then to give access to everyone to have that connection with factories and can do small orders. So
that's so cool. Now, do you do everything, right? I mean, do you do like, we connect you with manufacturers, we'll take your orders, you pay us, we make sure they get paid. I mean, do you handle, you mentioned sort of quality assurance on site, having people take pictures. I mean, are you handling everything sort of soup to nuts when it comes to this component, including things like, logistics and tariffs and sort of distribution and shipping? Like what kind of value chain are you creating for your customers that sign up online?
So in the beginning, it was the first year of being an entrepreneur, and you learn really quickly you can't always say yes because you do face challenges with that. So we are almost a full service company. We want to try to do as much as we can for our clients so they can focus on designing and running their own business. But we really focus on the manufacturing piece. So, the marketing your products and selling them, that's up to the entrepreneur. All those other, developing the product, say you come to us with just a sketch, we don't help develop the product. We do need, a photo of it or a sewing pattern to get started. And so, if you come to us and you don't have any fashion design experience, but you want to make a product, we'll refer you to a pattern maker, and that lives where you live, and you can work with them to hash out the design and then come to us when you're ready to start manufacturing. But as far as the shipping component, we do help with that. So through our platform, MakersValley does invoice you. All of your invoices and everything are centralized in your account. So we really focus on making that process seamless for you so you can focus on the other parts.
That's super cool. I mean, it's very clear that your mission is very sort of service oriented. It's very sort of entrepreneur, small business sort of focused. Can you sort of summarize like what MakersValley's, sort of mission and vision are?
Yeah, so our whole vision is to democratize the manufacturing industry and make great manufacturers accessible to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And right now we started with apparel because that was where, my co-founder, he had these connections with manufacturers in Italy, and we used that network to build this business. However, in the future and, 5-10 years, we do plan to look at other types of products for people that want to, say, make their own line of wine or coffee. So we will be, eventually branching out into other countries and finding other manufacturers of products that are high quality and connecting, entrepreneurs with those factories as well through our platform. So
that's so cool. That's so cool. So it's sort of fashion now, perhaps. And can you cover everything in fashion, men, women's, anything when it comes to fashion? So it's fashion now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a little over about 150 factories, and they range in size. So it can be a single artisan on the platform looking at your project you want to make, or it can be a factory with 40 sewers. And so basically, they run the gamut. So they can produce children's clothing, men's or women's. Usually factories are clustered. So, if they can't do it, the factory next door can. So yes, and then also limited accessories for apparel as well.
Very cool. And then the future potentially could be, as you mentioned, wine. So wine is obviously an option. Are you looking at sort of high-end luxury goods as well, or sort of everything in that sort of gambit?
So we're really in the early stages of thinking about it. We're trying, what the whole vision is to identify for each country, what is their greatest export? What are they exporting that they're really great at? And we want to enable people to connect with those manufacturers and make their own, let's say, style of wine with their name on it and sell it in the United States, for example. So we're still open. We're still brainstorming on that to find those products that we want to go out and expand to.
Wow, it sounds really exciting. And you've done this without taking any investment from any company. That there's no future pitch at Shark Tank or no angel investor. It's all something you've organically grown, right?
That's right. So we're bootstrapped. So the company is 100% founder owned. And thank you. And we started out, selling. So when you want to start a new business, just getting out there and talking to many people and selling it is really the first step, right? Once you do that, we did apply to some startup accelerator programs, and we did get about $90,000 in funding through those. So those were non-equity accelerators, which means they don't take part of your business. However, they do mentor you, they give you access to investors, and they really coach you in your business. And we were really lucky to be a part of Arch Grants in St. Louis, where we won $50,000 in funding, and also Parallel 18, where we won $40,000. And those are two excellent networks. And, we are part of those ecosystems, and we're still part of them, and they just really helped us a lot grow and learn.
That's really cool. And how would you describe for entrepreneurs the value of being part of an accelerator program or some sort of co-working spaces?
It's I would say it's incredible, and especially if you're a new entrepreneur, you don't know where to start. Maybe you just have an idea. Getting into an accelerator or just being in a co-working space around entrepreneurs, just bouncing ideas off one another, just kind of surrounding yourself with like-minded people will kind of help the neurons sync, so to speak, and will help you kind of take your business to the next level. So, when you become part of these accelerators, usually the first few weeks, they give you the nuts and bolts in a series of workshops. They give you the nuts and bolts of how to run your business, how to raise it up. Working from the accounting basics to the legal basics, how to start a company. They really cover the whole thing. And they have investors come in from, Google or different companies that are very successful and really spend one-on-one time with you and look at your business that you're trying to make and coach you through all of that. So that's really invaluable to have that FaceTime with people like that.
That's really amazing. I mean, we're trying to do for something very similar. Actually, we're trying to do exactly the same thing for our Trinity students that are at Trinity right now. We have our own venture competition where students can win a grant of up to $30,000 to help launch their business. And associated with that is a summer accelerator program that our students get a chance to experience, where they get to go through all the experiences of what you're going through in a more formal accelerator, but sort of in a shorter sort of summer only sense. So it's super exciting that as an alumna, you're participating in very same things that right now our students are doing as well. Let's shift a little bit to folks who might be sort of thinking about being entrepreneurs and sort of launching their own sort of entrepreneurial vision. Part of today's focus is like how to start your own fashion brand, right, from your living room. What kind of sort of advice would you give with regards to starting the marketing component of starting your business? Let's talk about sort of marketing and promotions and where that fits.
Okay, so with marketing, especially if you haven't raised any money for your business idea and you just have an idea, you don't know if it'll actually sell or take off, there's a lot of scrappy ways to do your marketing. And we've tried to be very scrappy, starting the business, from the ground up. And when you're starting your marketing, you really want to make sure that you have a clear message that you're sending to people that are interested in your product. You want to create a personality for what you're selling or what you're doing. And, to do that, you want to partner up with people that are also startups and that offer perhaps complementary services to what you're doing. So say, you want to launch your own handbag line. You probably want to try to partner up with someone that's launching their own shoe line and then try to have joint events together. So that's a great way to market yourself and get your name out there. Power in numbers. So just kind of finding other startups that are typically very open to partnering up with you and, doing these kind of events. Some people, for example, will go to like a nice hotel and ask, can I use your lobby area to sell my handbags? For an example, can I go to a boutique and they'll say, can I have a trunk show here and sell my handbags? And that's great for the boutique because they get new customers in the door, and that's great for you because you get some publicity and some marketing. So partnering up with other startups is always very helpful, and you definitely learn a lot from that. And I would say just, as our business has grown, we definitely have focused a lot more, now that we're in our third year, we focused a lot more on our branding, going down to like the very basics, like just using the same colors for everything, the same logo. Video is big right now. So, doing a lot of videos like this where people can meet you and get to know you. So that for us has been really, really helpful, is partnering with other startups and accelerator programs and doing a lot of marketing.
So with regards to marketing, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask you about MakersValley's sort of website and social media presence. Can you tell us a little bit about where your website is and on what social media platforms you currently are on? Yeah,
so our main website is MakersValley.net. You can learn all about us through there. And we have a platform that you can sign up. There's a button there that you can click and sign up, and it's free to sign up. So even if you're just curious and you want to see how that technology works and just take a look around, it's free. So definitely have fun with it. And we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So you can also find us there, and very active on those, and definitely like talking to people about different ideas they have.
So for people who are listening in, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and what's the sort of, is it at MakersValley, or what's the actual tag we're looking for?
So on Twitter, you're looking for at Ask MakersValley, and on Facebook and Instagram, just MakersValley, all together, and then MakersValley.net is where you can find us. MakersValley.net.
That's the important part, not only for marketing, obviously, MakersValley, but for people who are listening in who might be entrepreneurs, sort of the importance of social media. How has social media sort of changed the way in which you're interacting with either clients or manufacturers for your company?
Yeah, social media, that's great. So that's interesting, right? Because we're a global startup, and we're a marketplace. So we are, in essence, we have two customers. We have our manufacturers on one end that we're helping, and then we have our designers on the other end. So it's interesting when you're working in different countries, because you have this question about, should my social media posts be in Italian, or should they be in English, or should I blend them? And then you have this interesting question of, well, what time should I post on social media? Is it when the Italians are drinking their coffee in the morning, or is it when the Americans are having lunch? So that's always a fun challenge when you have a global startup and social media. And what we ultimately decided was to do a blend of both. And we use analytics to measure our traffic on our social media posts, so you can see which ones perform better. And the best social media posts are always the one, like I said, with people in them. So showing yourself, showing videos of what you're doing. And in the beginning, we had no marketing at all. We had zero. We were just doing everything by word of mouth. Customers were coming to us, just talking to one another. And then we started, doing Instagram and Facebook, and now we have a lot of people messaging us through those platforms and curious about our service, at all times of the day, because it is an internet business. So we do get questions all around the clock, and it's just been a really nice, engaging outlet to get our service out there. And it's free. So to not use it as an entrepreneur is, it's a missed opportunity. So that's how it's evolved.
So you guys are really all sort of e-commerce, right? You're an e-commerce company that's based out there. You worked, however, with folks that are brick and mortar. Can you talk a little bit, if I'm an entrepreneur thinking about starting a fashion business out of my own sort of backyard, for many of them, sort of the vision and sort of the dream is to like own their own store, right? Brick and mortar. But you've worked with obviously folks that have been both brick and mortar as well as folks that have been worked online. Can you talk a little bit about, like, if an entrepreneur is considering either or, like what kind of things they may want to go through or think through about choosing one path versus another path?
Yeah, so definitely the capital investment is different, right? If you're opening a brick and mortar store versus an online store, it's definitely easier to jump online and create an online shop within a week. But creating a brick and mortar store, it takes more time. And a lot of brands we're seeing are creating the brick and mortar stores, especially in fashion in general. They're creating them to give that experience of their brand. So they're becoming more of an experience store, where you can go in and look and feel what the brand is like. Whereas an online store, you can maybe give a feel and look for your brand through your imagery on your website, but you can't really give that full experience that maybe your customers want to have. So we've seen a lot of brick and mortar boutiques. Some of them, especially in New York City, they'll open coffee shops in their boutique now, and their boutique will not just be basically clothing, but it'll be other things to do inside. And they're trying to create this environment, sort of a showroom environment where they can have different things people can do there. So it's really a personal decision. It's really based on what your business goals are. If you open a brick and mortar boutique, you have to be there all day or have someone that can be there. So that presents another thing to think about. With an online store instead, you don't have to hold any inventory. So you can just work with MakersValley and just order 50 units and just sell them as you go, as you get orders online. So you really have to weigh the pros and cons of both. We have a partner called Boutique Hub, which has thousands of brick and mortar boutiques on their website, and they are very helpful for new brick and mortar boutique owners and online shop owners if you need resources on how to get started, from finding a boutique space to rent, to getting those relationships with manufacturers established or with wholesalers. That's a great community.
So it's really interesting. So is there sort of a listing of all the boutiques you work with, or is that just something that you just would rather not disclose for the sake of just ensuring that your customers' brand and manufacturing is their brand and manufacturing?
So we keep that pretty, we keep that internal, and we have a great relationship with our designers, where we're helping them fulfill the product need. But we do have some designers that we show on our website, on our blog. So if you go to blog.makersvalley.net, you can see some of the stories about some of the designers we've worked with, which are just incredible. We have amazing designers that have created products for a niche in the market that they found. And we do get a chance to kind of, broadcast that to everyone. And it's really fun to be part of their stories and their success. But most of the time we do keep that, it is internal.
Sure.
But if our designers want to be profiled, we do profile them.
That's super cool. There's a lot I love about your business. There's a lot about sort of the experience that I'm sort of loving. So if I'm an entrepreneur at home, I'm a designer, I'm thinking about starting something with my fashion brand, or perhaps I've already started it. I go to your website or do something similar with regards to manufacturing. I take some of the advice that you had with regards to sort of marketing. How about selling? How do I sell stuff online?
That's a great question. And, selling is always the first step to being an entrepreneur. If you can sell a product, then you're on the right path. And it's really easy to get distracted with running a business because there's so many parts of it that you have to manage, especially when you're a startup, that selling can sometimes go to the very end of the priority list. But to get started selling, it really comes down to having a great product or service. So, really being clear about what that product or service is and what you offer and what you don't offer. If you have a good product, the product will sell itself, essentially. So if you need to learn how to sell, maybe you don't have skills in that, I would say find someone that does know how to sell and ask if you can just shadow them for the day, listen to their phone calls, go on meetings with them, watch Shark Tank. They're selling when they're pitching. So I didn't have any sales experience, but I'm a very social person. So I love, striking up conversations with people I don't know. And I think if you're social, that's a great skill for an entrepreneur. So really knowing your value proposition for your business, being able to articulate that to someone and get them excited about it is really the key to sales.
So you mentioned Kickstarter as a sort of platform for someone who's trying to start something for fashion to sort of get out there and sort of sell it and get people sort of like to pre-order it before they sort of manufacture. Are there other kinds of platforms that many of your clients may be using? I think you mentioned Shopify, I think is one of them. Or is that one, or are there others?
So our clients, we actually survey them, asking them, if they have difficulties funding their production or sample orders with us, because we want to help them get to that stage. So we've gotten different responses from them. Some of them raise money from family and friends. Some do go the Kickstarter route, which if you do have a Kickstarter campaign, it does require you to promote your Kickstarter campaign. So through social media. And some work with investors, and they get funding from investors for their product idea, and they go to production that way.
Very interesting. Very cool. So one final question from folks who have sort of been texting stuff and sending stuff over. Their question was with regards to sort of the range of accessories that you have the capacity of sort of selling with regards to your manufacturers. Would you mind sharing with our viewers what are the range of accessories? You mentioned handbags already. Are there other kinds of accessories?
Yes. So for accessories, we do have manufacturers out of Florence, for example, that do handbags, hats, scarves, socks, ties, pretty much the basic accessories, we do them. If we don't have a manufacturer that can do that, we'll let you know. When you go on our platform and submit your project, we'll tell you, we don't have a manufacturer in this area yet. The reason why is because we get new manufacturers signing up all the time.
Sure.
And we do go through the process of vetting them. So we actually go there, we onboard the factory, We make sure, that they're hitting all the points of our service that we want. So we want to make sure that before we connect with the manufacturer that we are vetting them, which is why sometimes maybe we might get your requests, but we can't help you at that moment. But yes, those accessories, we do them. We do not do jewelry at the moment. We get a lot of requests for that. But yes, that's what you can find. And, if you go on our platform, you can see a list of what we do offer.
Oh.
So don't worry. You'll see that whole list and you can pick from the list. So.
And that's MakersValley what was that again?
Net.
MakersValley.net. So for everyone who's viewing, it's MakersValley with an S.net.
Yes.
So we're wrapping up close to the end of our webinar series. I'd like to remind everyone who's viewing that our next webinar series will be taking place June 25th. As the next series will be coming in. So we've got a couple of closing questions that we sort of like to get a sense about sort of from your experience. The first one is, how did your Trinity experience sort of blend to help prepare you for where you are now as an entrepreneur?
Well, it helped a lot. And I'm still very connected with the Trinity community. It's helped as an entrepreneur. You tend to jump from place to place, traveling a lot, at least with the global startup. Every city I've been to in the United States, even abroad, I can find a Trinity kind of set my roots in that city and figure out my way around. If I ever needed, someone to help me with accounting or legal, I always reached out to the Trinity alumni office, and they were able to connect me with the Trinity alum that did that. So that was really helpful. Yeah.
So the Trinity Alumni Office, if I'm in Chicago or if I'm in New York City, will help connect me with other alumni that might be local, who might be helping with a legal question or with manufacturing or something like that.
Exactly. Yes. And that's how we actually set up our company in New York City. I worked with a corporate attorney that was a Trinity alum there, and he referred me to his friends that helped me with other parts of my business. So I always kind of use that Trinity network to help me with my business, which is really valuable.
Well, it's really exciting. Trinity is going to be having some activities for students actually in Italy. There'll be a study abroad program that'll be in Italy this summer. There'll be another study abroad program that'll be in Italy actually next year. I certainly see there'll be opportunities then for Trinity students to be connecting with you while they're in Italy too, and it's sort of utilizing the alumni network.
Definitely, yes. And MakersValley is always looking for interns. So if you're interested in, spending some time in Italy and working with a startup, definitely reach out to me. We're looking for that.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's probably more than a handful of students at Trinity who are listening to this podcast right now who have on their first list who their number one intern experience is going to be, and it's going to be with you in Italy. And if not Italy, they'll be perfectly happy to do it in New York City. So one of the questions that we ask during these kind of webinars for alumni is sort of your favorite Trinity memory. What as you think back about your time with Trinity, what sort of stands out as one of your sort of highlight Trinity memories?
Oh, wow. There's so many.
You can pick more than one. You can pick two or three.
There's so many. I think the best memories were, I was in the business fraternity, Alpha Kappa Psi. Okay. I was also in the Zeta Chi sorority. Just spending time with the students, my friends, living in South and Murchison and walking up the tower, just being around campus, being in coats, studying very late for exams during exam season. And some of my professors, Dr. King was incredible. I had some great advisors there. Also in the healthcare administration program, also connected with some of the professors there, Dr. Kaisi. And it's just, I have a lot of great memories from Trinity and try to go back as much as I can. Not as often as I can, but not as often as I want to, but try to go back as much as often. Also some great restaurants and miss the food. And definitely glad to see that in San Antonio in general, there is definitely a startup community growing. So that's great that there's those resources there.
Oh, well, listen, there's an exciting sort of excitement of entrepreneurship happening in San Antonio. It's happening amongst our Trinity students. I certainly extend an invitation for you to come and spend time with our Trinity entrepreneur students on campus whenever you're in San Antonio. And we run a year-long program, so if it turns out to be the summertime, it's okay. We've got students in our Summer Accelerator program as well as our intern program that would love to spend some time talking with you about your journey as well as share their journey with you. We launch 6 startups every year here at Trinity, from students working on their own legitimate companies. And we've launched over 44 companies now at this point in the last 8 years. So we extend an invitation to you, as well as all our other listeners who might be alumni or non-alumni who are entrepreneurs, to come and spend some time with our Trinity students sharing their entrepreneurial journeys with us. Tiffany, I've had an incredible hour having this great conversation with you about your entrepreneurial journey and your experience with MakersValley. Is there any sort of last parting thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, thanks for listening in. And I hope that I was able to share with you some information that'll help you grow your own business. And if you're curious at MakersValley, feel free to reach out to me at hello@makersvalley.net. And I'm here for any advice that you need, whether starting your own business or just in general about the entrepreneurial journey.
So as a reminder for everyone who's listening in, that's MakersValley with an S in the middle, makersvalley.net. You can also find MakersValley on Instagram and on Facebook, and at Ask MakersValley on Twitter. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for your time. I'd like to thank all of our listeners and people who are participating in our webinar live. For those people who will be catching this later on either sort of YouTube or on our sort of webinar series, thank you so much for joining us. Our next webinar series will be taking place June 25th. My name again is Luis Martinez, Director for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I've had the great pleasure of having the conversation today with Tiffany Chimal, class of 2007. Tiffany, thank you so much for your time. And for all our listeners, thank you all so much for listening to us today. Thank you.